Hey, this is Clive Vickers, sharing the art of bonsai one branch at a time. So today I'm going to be styling a Spekboom. This is a really nice plant for beginners. It loves a good prune and it's super easy to care for. Cool, so let's get started. So first we're going to start by looking at the tree. So I've got my turntable and I'm just going to slowly look what the tree has to offer. So I can see straight away that there's quite a few main leaders. So we're going to obviously have to decide on one. And then something I don't really have in my collection is a formal upright Spekboom. So I'm going to try and create one of those today. So turning the tree around, I can already see which branches I want to start removing. So I'm just going to start by cleaning up some of the branches right at the base, and then we can get to see a better look at the trunk and the bari of the tree. So naturally in the wild, all the animals would graze on the Spekboom right at the bottom here where they can reach. So generally speaking, there's nothing that's really growing right on the base. You can see this is a bigger, thicker branch. So I'm going to use my concave cutter to get these out. And I'm just going to clean up those bigger branches and these smaller over here. Just like that. Okay, now you can see as we work our way up the tree, there's all these small little buds that we're not going to need lower down on the tree. As remember, the bottom branches should always be your longest, most dominant branch. So these small little ones are going to be right at the top of your tree or on the tips of your branches. So you can see I'm just slowly cleaning up these little obvious ones. And if I swing it around here, I don't know if you can see over here, there is small little bits over there. Cool, so now we've cleaned up the base of the tree quite nicely. So now what I want to do is decide on a leader. So you can see there's one shooting right to the top like this one. There's one shooting right to the top over here. And then potentially if I shift the tree like that, we can also see a leader growing up over here. So I quite like this leader. You can see that it has a lot of nice branches we can work with. If I shift the tree down over here, if we remove these over here, there will be nice branches as our bottom branches over there. So I'm going to decide to take off these two leaders over here because like I said, I want a formal upright. So we only want one leader and one trunk on this tree. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to take my concave cutter and I'm going to come right in here and I'm going to chop this off over here. And then I'm going to come in, I'm going to grab this branch over here and I'm going to take away this leader over here. So I'm just going to come in and clean up these stumps a bit better. You can see that Spekboom holds a lot of moisture in the branches and the trunk. You can see how much water is in this tree, and that is why it is so drought tolerant. Cool, and obviously these will heal over time, but for now they look like big ugly scars, but they will heal nicely. So now we have to try and get this branch more upright. So I could wire this upright. I am going to put a bit of wire just to give it a bit of movement. But at the same time, Spekboom isn't as flexible as your junipers. So we can't do such a drastic bend to it. So what I thought about doing is I've got some nice wood that I found in the garage that I thought I would never use. But hey, look at me now. I'm using my piece of wood. So I'm going to put some wood under here just to tilt the tree up. And then you can see how it's going to stand a lot more upright. So when I repot the tree, we can repot it in an angle like this. So now you can see how the tree is a lot more upright. You can see how I've got my base of the trunk. I could potentially use this as my dominant bottom branch. then I could use this as a second branch or find a second branch here, and then you can see how it flows all the way up to the top of the tree over here. So before we start wiring the main trunk, I'm going to clean up all these small little buds growing right on the trunk, and you can see they're very obvious to remove because we're going to rather use these main branches that you can see over here. So all these tiny little buds we're just going to remove. It's going to be easier to get wire on. We're not going to squash any of them, so we might as well just remove them now. And as we go, we can clean up a few more as we see them. You can notice on the really small bits of foliage, I just pluck with my fingers, but if it's quite a big branch, then I would rather cut it off. Cool, so now we're going to get started and we're going to wire this tree up. So I'm going to start by wiring the main trunk. You can refer to another video I've done on this, and then you can see how easy it is to wire up the trunk of your tree. So I'm just going to measure how much wire I need quickly. Just like that. I'm going to cut the tip of the wire, and now we can get started wiring. So I always like to wrap it with 2 pieces of wire for a nice thick branch, just to give it extra hold. So I'm just going to go and follow the exact same pattern on the tree. Cool, now it's time to give some movement to this tree. So I'm again going to just go around and have a look at how I want to style the tree. I've got a fairly good idea, but it's always nice to just double check. Cool, so what I'm going to start doing is, you can see how the branch or the main trunk is flowing this way. I want to try bring it up a lot more straighter. So I'm going to bend it over like this. Remember, Spekbooms aren't as flexible as like your junipers and so on, so just be a little bit more mindful when styling these trees. So I'm going to swoop it up. I'm just going to give it some natural, nice flow. Again, like I said, I want to do a formal upright tree, so I'm really not trying to give it such a drastic bend. I just want to give it some nice flow in the main tree like this. So you can see, just by doing that, I've raised the tree up and given it that nice flow, so it looks a lot more natural. Just like that. So I'm going to swing the tree around so you can see it almost from the front. Now, because I've bent everything, all the branches have shifted and changed direction. So you can see that in here there's a lot of branches that are in the curve of the tree, which is not ideal. There's quite a big, fat, ugly branch right at the top, which is also not too ideal because it could start competing with the most dominant branch over here. So we're going to start by cleaning up some of the branches on the tree. So this is an example of that curve. You can see how the trunk is swooping and curving like this, we never really want to branch in that curve, only on the outside of the curve. So I'm going to start trimming off these obvious branches that are growing right in that curve. I can swing it around over here. When I move this branch out of the way, you can see how there's a branch right in that curve over there, and again over there, just like that. I'm going to trim those away. So now these are very obvious. They are growing completely downwards, and that's never ideal. So we're going to start by trimming those off just like that. So you can see as soon as you put some wire on your tree and shift the shape, everything else shifts and changes. So all these branches that are growing directly under, I'm just going to remove. And now I'm going to go through the tree, and if I notice any others, I'm just going to remove them as I go. And then you can also trim away any obvious branches that are growing upwards like this. If they're too long and leggy, you can just trim them back a little. I'm not worrying too much about the lengths of the branches. I'm just cleaning up all of these branches that we don't need anymore. Cool, so now let's get started with wiring the other branches on the tree. So I always like to wire the bottom branches first. So I'm going to start by wiring this bottom branch over here, and then next I'll wire this branch over here if I swoop it around like that. Cool, so got my wire. Cool, so you can see how this branch has extended quite a bit over here. And I'm going to allow this to, if I cut this back over here, these two will become stronger and they'll become the new leaders. And like I always say, is you want that taper in your branches. So if I had to keep this long branch, it's going to look the exact same thickness throughout the branch. So I'm going to trim this back to about here. Just like that, and now I can continue the wire up this branch over here. Cool, so now I'm not going to worry too much about positioning the branch yet. I'm just going to wire the whole tree. Cool, so I'm going to have to shorten this branch quite a bit. So I'm always going to find a branch that I cut back to. So over here there's a nice thinner branch. And the reason why I want to cut this shorter is, again, this branch will then be longer than your bottom branch, and then the tree won't have that natural conical shape. So I'm just going to come in and shorten this branch over here, and I'm going to trim that off, and now we can use this as the new branch over here. So the exciting part begins. Now we can start designing the shape of the tree. So like I always say, we're going to start by wiring the bottom branches, giving the bottom branches some movement, and always keeping in mind that conical triangle shape. So I'm just going to start by wiring this branch over here. So I'm going to start by wiring this branch out. You can see how straight it is, so we're going to get some nice movement to it. So an example, if I had to bend it this way, you can see how this branch is now in that curve, which is not ideal. We always want the branches to be out on the outside of the curve. So I'm going to bend it this way right at the base, and then I'm going to swoop it back this way so that this branch over here is on the outside of that curve. I don't know if you can see it better this way. You can see it's on the outside, just like that. So I'm going to bend it nicely, and then I'm going to swoop this one back. And you almost want these two branches to work together. So you can see how the branch has come from one branch, it's split into two, and now eventually we'll hope for them to split into another two. So it will go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8. And that's where you start building that nice ramification in your tree. But all we're going to do is just set these branches in place, and then we can start refining it over time. Cool, so now I'm going to swoop it over here, and I'm going to start bending this branch, giving it a bit of movement. So you can see this would almost be the front of the tree. You can see how you can see the nice shape it's got. It's working all the way up to the top. You can see that movement in the trunk. I'm starting to set the main branches out. You can even swoop them down a little bit more. Then I've got another branch over here, and again we're going to start climbing those ladders. Again, this is this is the start of the tree. So this is the day one of it becoming a bonsai, and then we're going to start refining it there onwards. So now I want to reduce the height of the tree a bit. I don't want to reduce it too much because I like that formal upright style. But if I see over here, there's two branches growing from one section here, so we can just use the one as the new leader. So I'm going to keep the thinner one again for that nice taper in the tree, and I'm going to trim off this bigger one just like that. And now we can start using these little bits of foliage as the new branches, so we can start bringing them down nicely like that. I notice that there's this branch that I can slowly start wiring down, so I'm just going to pop some wire onto here and potentially some wire on this branch over here. And you can see all I'm doing is bringing this branch a little bit downwards, and I'm trying to allow it to grow into this negative space over here. And then when I swoop it around here, you generally want to show off the main trunk line of the tree. So I would definitely not want to cover it like that. You always want your branches to swoop outwards, and this one's going to flow in over here. I'm just going to swing it around. It's a bit easier for me to see, and then I'll show you guys now. I'm going to swoop it in over there just to make this pad look a little bit bigger and fuller. But then again, now because I've drastically cut the tree quite down, it's going to send off new shoots, it's going to backbud everywhere, and then we can reuse those bits of foliage to continue the design of the tree. But you can see it's always important as a beginner to keep that conical triangle shape. It really helps design your nice trees that way. Awesome, and there you have it. Obviously, there's a few little things we can touch up on, but we can always do that on another day. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly put this into a training pot so that it has lots of room to grow, and then we can have a beautiful bonsai in the next few months. So you can see now that I've taken the wood away, the angle's changed. So when we repot it, we want to change the angle so it's a lot more upright. So we must just keep that in mind when repotting. So what I'm just going to do, I'm really not going to give it a drastic repot because we're in autumn currently. So I'm just going to almost slip pot it, loosen a bit of the roots, and put it in this nice training pot just to let it thicken up a little bit more. So I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to chop these plastic bags away. I'm going to take the tree out of this plastic bag. You can see all these nice roots that are growing through the bag, which is really good. So the first root I'm going to start taking away is this big tap root over here. So the big roots are the roots you generally want to prune away. But like I say, because we're in autumn, we don't want to prune too much away right now. But this will be perfect to prune away. It's just one big root, and there's a lot of fine roots on the tree. And Spekboom are exceptionally hardy trees. So I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to trim this one right at the bottom, just like that. And any of these bottom roots, just going to clean it up. There we are. Cool, so now I'm just going to start loosening some of this old soil. You can see this plant was just growing in quite a muddy soil, so now putting it into really nice draining soil, this tree is really going to start thriving. I'm exceptionally excited for springtime. There's going to be some really cool videos I'm going to do. You can see all this old soil just coming off. Just like that. I'm just going to chuck this out of the way. And I'm going to get my training pot. So now we can just kind of start to see, will it fit nicely in the training pot? We will obviously want to angle it up quite nicely. So you can see in me putting it in the training pot, it's sticking out quite a bit. So we could also build the soil up quite nicely. But I think what I'm going to do is just trim a few of the roots off just to help it sit in the pot a little bit better. So you can see, because we've changed the angle, I'm going to come in and trim some of these roots off so it sits a little bit nicer in that pot. Awesome. I'm just going to clean up a bit of these roots just to untangle them a bit, and that's all we're going to do today. Awesome. So I'm going to pop that down there. I'm going to grab some soil. I'm just going to put a thin layer at the bottom because obviously there's quite a bit of roots, and that'll determine the height of the tree. I'm going to pop it in here. You can see it's still raised quite above the pot, but that's also okay because I also want to start seeing the surface roots on the tree. So you can see we can trim some of these off if the soil doesn't cover them. So I'm just going to wiggle it in. This is the perfect time to now remember to angle your tree perfectly the way you want it. Remember, in the pot the tree was like this. Now I've angled it up like that, and the tree looks so much better from such a small little movement. So angling your trees really do help. And now I've added some soil, and I'm just going to work that in. So I don't know if you guys know, but you can get the same type of endorphins as like exercise and things like that with working with soil. Same as doing like pottery, you get these natural endorphins that just make you feel so much happier. I'm just going to start pushing that soil in between there just to make sure there's no air pockets. And you can see it's starting to feel a lot more sturdy in the pot. So you can see all the soil's going in between some of the roots. Even though I didn't do a full repot, it's still important to get those, air pockets away. Cool, so now you can start to see that the tree is going to have quite a nice thick base, and now with it sticking out a little bit, we can start working on that over the few seasons. Cool, and there you have it. I've repotted this beautiful little Spekboom, and now we need to let it grow and thrive. So there you have it. And remember, once you repot a tree, you want to give it a nice bit of water. You can go and refer to one of my other videos where I show you how to correctly water a bonsai. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Like I say, you can find Spekboom all over South Africa. So grab one and start bonsaiing. Thank you so much for the support, for the love, and I'll see you all next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. Thank you all. Cheers.